Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, Apple and Amazon end this week in tech earnings. We'll discuss Apple's global growth comeback.
Plus, Reddit surges on a record profit. We discuss with the company's COO, Jen Wong.
And we'll be joined by Roblox CEO David Baszucki to break down the company's earnings and its advertising push later this hour.
But let's get to the macro perspective first, Ed, because it's pretty ugly out there. In fact, we're having the worst day on the Nasdaq 100 since April, the worst week since May, and that's as we get that so-called resilient jobs market with some cracks showing and some revisions for previous months when it comes to the labor force. That drags down stocks, it sends bonds higher, but I'm also looking what the implications of tariffs really are. That 15.2% general average now for tariffs on goods coming into the United States. There's clarity there, but is there long-term negotiations still to come? And what does it mean for tech stocks more broadly? Let's get to Kaylee Lines. Just the breakdown, Kaylee, of what we learned on where countries are standing right now.
Well, Caroline, there's many different layers to this. The global baseline minimum tariff rate will stay at 10%, despite some previous suggestions from the president that it could go higher. But indeed, the tariff rates will go higher for countries that have larger trade surpluses with the United States, from 15% to well beyond that for some countries who were able to secure deals with the United States in advance or, of course, had already received letters from the president. That includes the likes of Canada, for example, which will have a 35% tariff on its goods, though there is a carve out for those that are compliant with the USMCA trade agreement, or a country like Switzerland, which will see a 39% rate. In aggregate, according to our estimates here at Bloomberg Economics, if these tariffs go into effect and stick, it will take the average tariff rate for the United States up to 15.2% from the current 13.3%, which brings us back to levels last seen in the World War II era, and it's well above the little more than 2% rate on average that we saw before President Trump took office. That said, it is still an if. According to the orders that the president signed last night, these duties will not begin to be collected until August 7th, so about a week to go here. That does leave some wiggle room for countries to either continue negotiations, try to reach a deal, or maybe get an extension like we saw with Mexico yesterday, which was able to secure a 90-day extension of their current agreement. Also, we need to consider that China is still a question mark. That August 12th deadline is looming. The president has not signed off yet on an extension for the trade detente between those two countries, and he also had some measures that do seem aimed specifically at China in what he signed last night, with a 40% tariff that is going to be applied to so-called transshipped goods, though it's not exactly clear how those rulings will be made or how that will be enforced. Also unclear is what sectoral tariffs could still come into the picture, as there's still ongoing Section 232 investigations into things like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, and we're awaiting those outcomes as well.
Kaylee Lines with a breakdown. Thank you so much. Look, let's get to your micro picture, because there's trade, but Ed, you're looking at earnings.
Yeah, and earnings is a big story in the world of technology this morning. Amazon is an AI story and it's a cloud story. Look at the drop on the stock. Significant. The concern is the outlook for operating income. So much revenue comes from Amazon.com, but the majority of operating income from AWS, and the outlook seen as weak or conservative. But AWS in the period gone grew 17% in a quarter where Microsoft Azure grew 39%. And a quarter where Google Cloud Platform gained some territory. There's pressure there. Apple beat across every metric in the June quarter gone and told us in the September quarter mid to high single-digit percentage growth. But everyone this morning, Caro, is asking about pull in or pull forward. And what Apple said was in April, in the United States, 1 percentage point of growth was people front-running tariffs, but they grew 10 percentage points. Do we believe them? The market's down 1.6%.
Let's get more analysis with an investor. Tony Wong's with us. His T. Rowe Price Science and Technology Fund Portfolio Manager. Exposure to Apple. What do you think in terms of Apple's seeming resilience and growth in China?
Yeah, I think that their product is still in demand. I think they did some pricing adjustments to make it more attractive to fit under the subsidies. And at the end of the day, I think it's still a really high quality product and brand. I think that what matters going forward is their product innovation around AI and improving Siri. I think that you had a period where Huawei came back and took share back, and it was a competitive environment and made Apple kind of adjust a little bit to bring more value. But I think it's encouraging that things are getting better in China and they're growing again.
Tony, I want you to help me with the math here a little bit. So April, largely 1 percentage point of growth in the June quarter, was pull forward from tariffs. And then Apple told us that they would grow mid to high single digits in the September quarter. That would indicate that there isn't some kind of tariff front running here, that Apple's just growing because it's growing. Do you buy that?
Yeah, well, I think that, it's kind of hard to tell, to be honest. I think that there was a period when people were rushing to Apple stores to buy some iPhones before the tariffs, but I feel like that quickly subsided, and that was resolved relatively in short order. And so I think that what matters here is the forward look. As investors, you're probably looking more towards what they do with the next iPhone cycle, foldable. And in addition, like services was really strong. And so there was a fear that, what happens with, Google search, as well as kind of the App Store ruling where people are circumventing the App Store. It seems like that's actually been okay. And so going forward, I think that it's less about was there a little pull in or not, probably more the iPhone cycle coming up that people are focused on.
So Tony, when does the real pivot point come? When is it that you have confidence to add exposure and feel that Tim Cook and the team are on top of generative AI, of the opportunity at hand, of innovation?
Look, I think Tim Cook and the team, they're really talented, and they're world-class manufacturers, and their product leadership, they built that over decades. And so I don't think you can count them out. In terms of where the stock has been, it's lagged the market pretty considerably in a market that's been super beta fueled and risk-taking. And so, if the market turns, like Apple, I think is a safe haven. And then if you look at kind of the momentum they're building, things are probably going to get better over the next 12 months. And I do think that, they can do a lot within AI. They're probably, not rushing to commit to any one partner. They own the ecosystem. And so
Right.
To me, as long as the iPhone is still the main, channel for AI, I think that's really important.
Talent wasn't mentioned on the call, but the final question was about M&A in the context of AI. And what Tim Cook said, and I know because I put it in the Top Live blog, and then I screenshotted it, we are very open to M&A. Tim Cook, 2:57 p.m. Pacific time, Thursday, July 1st. Is that a starter gun or signal, particularly to investment bankers, or do you expect Apple to stay sort of muted and disciplined on that front?
I think Apple's very muted. And I wouldn't say muted, but they're very disciplined. And I think that they have a very, very strong focus in what matters in their direction. I mean, for a long period of time, you could put all their products on one table and to be really great at what they do. And so I don't think they're going to be muted. I think they're going to be disciplined and focused. And they have made acquisitions that can really, I think, plug into the ecosystem, enhance their talent. I don't think they're going to go do a really big, splashy acquisition. But if you take a step back, they're generating a ton of capital. Right. And there's a lot of potential for improvement in via M&A.
Tony Wong, T. Rowe Price, great to have you back on Bloomberg Tech. Thank you very much. Let's stick with earnings and turn in part to Amazon. I'm actually going to keep going with Apple as well, with Laura Martin, who covers the broad gamut of tech, but analysts at Needham. You were listening there to Tony, right? I just wondered if you had any difference of opinion on any of the ground that we covered.
Yes, I would be much more negative. I think the Apple stock cannot work without an Apple iPhone replacement cycle. And Tim Cook said on the call that they have 20 generative AI capabilities involved in its current iPhone, but next year we're going to get really the Apple Intelligence step up. So that's 2 years after he originally promised it, which means we're not going to get an iPhone replacement cycle this year in September. It would be next year at the earliest, which means I don't think the stock can work. I don't think it can outperform. Meanwhile, when you listen to Alphabet, they've got Google Gemini, and they are incorporating generative AI features in every one of their products, including Android, which is the primary competitor here. So you and I aren't incented to go out and replace our iPhones, which means our iPhones are getting another year older. And at some point, if one of the Android version runs ahead with some cool feature that all of us want to try or can't live without, we are more likely to shake loose from that iOS ecosystem because they aren't showing us anything that keeps us there as these iPhones age and we want to replace our iPhones with something new.
Meanwhile, Dochi's doing a lot for Samsung foldable phones and plenty of others on the market right now. I just pivot, therefore, to Amazon, which does have hardware. But look, we're looking at the growth story of cloud right now. And AWS, 17% was exactly where analysts wanted it to be. But did it just pale into comparison compared to where Azure was and where Google is in terms of cloud?
Yeah, so what they said was that there was real margin pressure here, right? Margins went to 32%, down from 39% last quarter, and like Google's cloud margins were through the roof, so were Microsoft's. So when you have they're all capacity constraints. So we would have forgiven Amazon the 17% growth rate in revenue if their margins had stayed at that very high sort of 40% level, because they're out of capacity. So they should be like charging a lot for anybody that uses demand in their cloud. But they didn't. They were under margin pressure. So I think people didn't like that. I think my opinion is they're losing business because their competitors are price competing and taking away clients. You know, Apple's still the biggest. They're 65% bigger in cloud than the next closest guy. They invented the business. And he made the point that 85% of companies are still on physical servers on premise, and all of those companies need to move to the cloud, and Amazon's the biggest. So I think this is a short-term problem, but boy, is the market mad. I mean, investors are mad about these numbers coming out of Amazon.
But they're quite often mad at Amazon because Amazon is willing to say, sorry, profit tomorrow, profit the next quarter. For now, I invest in my business. Did he sound bullish enough on the generative AI opportunity? Because goodness, they're intertwining it left, right, and center as well.
You know, maybe. I think this is the right guy in the seat, right? This guy is the one who sort of founded cloud. And to the extent cloud is either under siege or doing something wrong or Wall Street's just mad, this is the guy to fix it. Like, this isn't a CEO from a different business. This is his core business. I think Wall Street's a little mad that they're spending money on Kuiper, which is not making revenue. Alexa Plus, 10 years, we still don't have $1 of revenue, but a ton of expenses. And they're doing same-day delivery in urban centers, all of which feels like a lot of capital to spend at a time where you're in a race.
Can I ask you, Andy Jassy said, quote, very early days in artificial intelligence across all businesses. Very quickly, do we have any better understanding of Amazon's AI story than we do Apple's, which gets, of course, scrutinized a lot?
Yes, much better. They have a very clear AI strategy, which is to host everybody else's AI cloud on theirs. Remember, Google's proprietary, Microsoft proprietary. Amazon's strategy is to host all large language models. It just wants the cloud fees.
Laura Martin, keeping it short and sweet and to the point, we so appreciate. Stay well. Have a good rest of the weekend. Meanwhile, coming up, we stick with tech earnings. One that actually Laura covers is Reddit. The COO, Jen Wong, is there to discuss explosive sales growth. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Shares of Reddit absolutely surging today, up more than 20%, biggest jump since the first week of April. The company reported its most profitable quarter to date and projected sales for the third quarter that were above analyst estimates. Reddit COO Jen Wong joins us now for more. And it's like one of those quarters where should we just start with the basics? Advertising was really strong in the quarter gone. Why was it so strong? Which geographies were good? What are you doing that makes Reddit so attractive relative to other platforms?
Thanks for having me. It was a really strong quarter across the board for Reddit. And in terms of revenue, we saw broad-based strength across all the verticals. We saw geographic strength in the US and in the rest of the world, growing over 70% in both geographies. We saw users grow 21%. Obviously, advertising revenue grew by 84% year over year, which is truly differentiated. We grew active advertisers by 50% year over year. And you can see across the funnel, both our lower funnel conversion objective plus brand were both big contributors to the results in Q2. So again, broad-based strength in the quarter.
It surprised investors, it surprised analysts. Did any of it surprise you, Jen? Any verticals that surprised you? Any geographies that surprised you?
I think this is a continuation and an output of our investments. We feel really good about our strategy and our roadmap. We've been investing in our capabilities to make every impression more valuable for marketers over the last couple of years, working on that lower funnel objective. And I think now we're seeing the benefits of all the value we're delivering to our customers. The team's been executing really well. We've been making investments and expanding our sales team across verticals, across geographies. That's coming in and supporting the broad-based strength. So we feel really good about the investments we've made. I think our work is working.
I just typed "who is Jen Wong" into Reddit answers, and it says Jen Wong is a prominent figure in the world of tech and business and COO of Reddit. But I find it an interesting tool, right? It's like supposed to be human-led answers. But might we see ads placed there? You know, people talk about this a lot. How will you monetize on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think before we get to monetization, which I think is a huge opportunity for Reddit in that space, in the area of search, I think we have an opportunity to build a very distinctive destination search experience. Reddit is where people come for real perspectives from real people, not looking for just the summary, but looking for what the context around, why did you think that this was the best running shoe because you live in heavy trails, a rocky area, you're a long distance runner, a short distance runner, like all those details of real human experience are brought to life in Reddit Answers and Reddit Search. What we're doing is bringing together this capability in Reddit Answers, which is an LLM on top of the incredible conversation on Reddit, and integrating that with core Reddit Search so that it becomes a more fulsome experience. And then as we continue to grow the use of that destination search, I think monetization follows. I mean, it's a lot of those queries are incredibly just naturally commercial in nature, or it's people trying to make decisions and allocate resources and buy things, to that fit their lives.
Yeah, I mean, monetization has been something you've done well with other deals for licensing your own data to generative AI, large language models. But Jen, there's a little bit of beef going on, perhaps with Anthropic. Can you give us any update as to what's happening with your relationships and further content licensing deals?
Yeah, I mean, I won't comment on litigation, but I will talk about data licensing. I mean, these were our first commercial relationships. We're a year and a half in. I think we've learned a lot, and we're still learning. I think we're open to conversations. I think what we're learning is that we, and frankly, everyone, can see Reddit's contribution to these LLMs, how often Reddit is cited, how important Reddit is for people to get the perspective that they're looking for. And when we see that, I think it reveals that the fact that Reddit, I think, has never felt more essential to the internet and to helping people. I think what we get excited about is when we look at this is the opportunity for ourselves, the opportunity for us to build products around the decades of conversation on Reddit. Reddit Answers and Search is one area, obviously growing those communities in our core product. So we get really excited about that. And I think overall the value of Reddit and its conversation in this world of AI is going up.
A lot of your job is flying around the world, international markets. Just very quickly, how's that going, getting dollars from abroad? And very quickly, also languages as well.
Yeah, I mean, international is incredibly important to us. It's about 20% of our revenue, and international revenue from advertising grew over 70% in the quarter. So it's been a growth driver for us. We're particularly active in Europe and EMEA. We're seeing really nice growth in our target countries where we're applying AI for machine translation to have global conversations in different languages so that people don't have language friction. We're also growing local communities, which we're excited about, doing some partnerships in sports and in entertainment that are really stimulating the growth of, local communities like telenovelas in Brazil and football in Germany. And that user growth that we're supporting then obviously creates a monetization opportunity.
Jen Wong of Reddit, it's wonderful to have time with you. Thank you very much indeed. Now coming up, Figma shares. Well, actually, are they managing to rise even on day 2 after that monumental launch? We'll talk about the IPO's big winners and what's next. This is Bloomberg Tech. Shares of Figma soared a whopping 250% on their first day of trading. That's the largest first-day pop for a US-traded company raising more than $1 billion in at least 3 decades. That's according to Bloomberg data. So is this positive, this strength, or is that money left on the table for the design software maker? Let's get to Katie Roof for her analysis. We're actually still clinging on to some gains in a down market today even, Katie. Feels the demand is so insatiable.
That's right. Clearly, the window is open for tech listings, or especially open for Figma. Yeah, you ask a good question about was there money left on the table? VC's favorite debate. Obviously, the sell side, which is primarily the company, but also the top shareholders, each sold 5% of their stakes. Yes, they would have, I'm sure, loved to sell for higher, and then, they could have raised more money. But I think there's a real question over what time frame do you evaluate a first day pop on. If you look at 2021, a lot of those stocks eventually bottomed out.
Thinking about some of the conversations Caroline had yesterday down at the NYSE, just fantastic, classic IPO stuff, right? Adjusted gross margin of 92%. Is this just because everyone loves a high margin software name, or is there some retail trading here? What's really happening?
Well, I think if you look at, it's not just this one. There have been several recent tech IPOs that saw big pops on the first day and in the recent trading. And so I think what you're seeing here is there's pent up demand for new tech listings. 2021 was a blockbuster year, and then there was an 18-month period where there were 0 tech IPOs. And when they first started to come back, the market was a little bit skittish, but I think they've decided they want tech stocks and they want more of them.
I think that in 2025, we've already pipped 2024 in terms of volumes, which is exciting. Bloomberg's Katie Roof, thank you very much. Now, coming up on Bloomberg Tech, we're going to be joined by the Roblox CEO, David Baszucki, to break down the company's earnings, its advertising push, and much, much more. Just a fantastic way to end a week in big tech and big tech earnings. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Tech. Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech. There's some kind of macro level economic concerns out there in the market. I'm looking at the Magnificent Seven, that collection of mega cap tech. Of course, within that, Apple and Amazon, which is actually the biggest points drag on most indices, is an earnings story. But at the same time, we covered off earlier in the show, Caro, tariffs having an impact in different ways in some of those companies. We'll get to more of that later in the hour. One earnings we haven't got to yet is Coinbase. Revenue projection missing estimates. But what I find so interesting about Coinbase is that its performance is directly tied to volatility, or in this case, a lack of volatility in crypto markets. But that stock drop of 16% is its biggest drop since March. Very interesting recalculation on one single name, but there are so many to get in.
There are. And let's go back to Roblox, because look, the gaming platform reported phenomenal booking increases, more than 50% in the last quarter. Daily active user count topping 111 million. Shares, as you see, still trading higher after the earnings posted yesterday morning. Roblox CEO David Baszucki joins us now. Dave, just across the board growth, daily active users, particularly the older cohort. I'm looking at hours engaged, revenue, bookings. We're seeing you raise your guidance. These viral experiences, Grow a Garden, for example, how much are they contributing to this growth?
Hey, great to be here. And we have created an essential, really the conditions to grow a garden. And in this case, growing amazing creative new experiences on Roblox. In addition to grow a garden, which is a cultural meme right now, there's 5 experiences on Roblox with more than 10 million daily active users. And I want to highlight, in addition to that great growth we saw 13 and up users grow daily active users 64% year on year. We have a vision of 10% of the global gaming content market running on our platform. And this really explosion of great new hits, it supports that thesis. I also want to highlight, even without Grow a Garden, we would have reported an amazing Q2 with great year-on-year growth rates.
Brookhaven's there, Grow a Garden's there. Just delve into these hits that you have. How much revenue do they sort of supply to you? Can you break it out on an individual win basis?
Well, I want to highlight these hits. A lot of them have been created in the last year. In fact, 4 of the top 5 experiences were created in the last year. Part of our vision is there's enormous headroom to innovate in the gaming space around how games are created, how people consume them, how they're social, all of this. And we believe this innovation is driving the ability for creators to make awesome new experiences on the platform. You know, we're starting to see some of these hits go global. Want to highlight, for example, APAC DAUs grew over 76% year on year, and we still have a lot of headroom. We're only about 3% of the global gaming market running on our platform, and our vision is to get to 10%.
Dave, I've been able to get with your team and talk a little bit in recent months about advertising. And one of the things I think people don't necessarily understand about Roblox is advertising is a revenue stream for you, but also for the devs, the creators themselves. But I think I'm right in saying you've never really given us a dollar figure on how it's going. Would you just update us on the ecosystem and the wins that you see for Roblox?
We do think there's a significant advertising opportunity on the platform, and you're exactly right. All of this growth we've been sharing, you know, bookings growth of north of 50% in Q2 was driven not by advertising, but by people spending Robux on the platform. That said, there's several categories of experiences and creators that advertising may be the best way for them to make future revenue. Highlighting, typically our vision is advertising for older users, not for younger users, because we're already so healthy monetarily there. And we have launched video advertising on the platform. We just in the last week opened it up for more creators. I will assure you, if and when we hit 10% of the global gaming market space, that advertising will be a key part of that top bookings line.
I kind of want to stick with the creators because I'm trying always to understand the ecosystem. So one thing that you've done is help creators get licensing deals. They might create a game, that game might be franchisable. Why do that? But also, like, are you kind of taking the liability on copyright and on legal and everything else that comes with a deal like that?
We aren't really. And what we've seen, you know, 2 years ago, people might have thought, well, you're not going to have any prime sports brands on your platform. And then all of a sudden we have, you know, NFL Universe, a partnership between the NFL and an existing developer on the platform be extremely successful. What we've started talking about with our IP platform is the ability for great brands, whether it's, for example, Stranger Things or Squid Game from Netflix, being available for creators on the platform who want to integrate the brand and really create a win-win in that these brands can have a lot of people interacting with them. It can drive engagement within them. So there's a lot of opportunity in the future to connect great brands, great IP with the creative energy of the developers on our platform.
I like that win-win idea and the revenue share that goes to the developers. Also, what's interesting is developers are buying from these one-off makers, say like Grow a Garden. I think it's a teen who still owns about half, but he sold off the other half of his business over to New Zealand's Splitting Point studio. Are you helping facilitate that M&A? How do you see your role there?
We would like to more and more make a very liquid market there. And at our Roblox developer conference a couple years ago, I shared that as we have a larger proportion of the gaming market running on Roblox, it's not inconceivable that there will be a billion-dollar studio on the platform. We're well into the nine figures, hundreds of millions of dollar type studios. And Grow a Garden was a great example of an initial small team working with Jandel, who acquired part of it. And it was a deal that was a win-win deal. The original creators did very well, and Grow a Garden has been refined and tuned into now the largest simultaneously played game in the history of the Guinness Book of World Records, going over 20 million concurrent players a few weeks ago.
Dave, about 3 weeks ago, you came onto the program and discussed with me generative AI video-based age verification. In the interim, on July 25th, we got the Online Safety Act, which will have an impact on you. Could you just quantify how those parameters might impact active users or engagement, just quickly?
I want to highlight, we have always had safety as one of our top priorities, and we're not waiting for the law or legislation. We've innovated with age estimation on our own because we want to keep people on our platform. Roblox is a place where we filter all the text and the voice, where we monitor for critical harms, where there's no image sharing or any of the things that might happen from that. So age estimation, we took leadership here in innovating, and we think it's going to set the standard for the industry.
Roblox CEO Dave Baszucki, it's great to have you back on Bloomberg Tech. Thank you very much. Now, coming up, we're standing by for SpaceX crewed Falcon 9 rocket launch headed to the International Space Station. Scrubbed yesterday. The countdown continues for today. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Tech. We're just a couple of minutes away, potentially, 4 astronauts set to launch to the International Space Station. Live shots of NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Complex 39A. The astronauts on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket in Dragon capsule. This Dragon capsule, Caro, will be its 6th flight, which is an interesting data point and milestone in and of itself. I say potentially because I was looking at those clouds. They're a bit worrying. I know that SpaceX and NASA are a bit worried as well.
Just talk about just what this means for Falcon 9, though, and the symbolic nature. It was but a few weeks ago that Elon Musk was threatening to decommission it, almost in his tete-a-tete with President Trump.
Absolutely right, and absolutely so. You know, NASA and America rely on SpaceX to move astronauts and human beings to and from ISS. If this mission is successful and goes off today, 290 people will have been to ISS in its history. 68 of those will have been flown by SpaceX in the modern era. Wow. So it gives you a sense proportionately of how much SpaceX has dominated this space. SpaceX has been warning us about Lightning. We were scrubbed yesterday. But that is the story that you need to understand. You know, SpaceX is the de facto market leader of moving not just humans, but payload to orbit, generally speaking.
Yeah, and go back to the fact that this is a 6th flight. It was originally commissioned for 5 flights, but they're trying to sweat this asset, right? This is all about bringing the cost down.
Yeah, I mean, look, the economics have changed vastly under SpaceX. I'm keeping an eye on the clock because if we tip over T-minus 1 minute, it's a pretty good signal that we will be launching in 60 seconds' time. You know, the ISS has a limited shelf life. It's going to be decommissioned beyond 2030 and literally crashed into the ocean. But it needs servicing. And so, you know, SpaceX right now is the only option. We have some reporting this week that the interim chief of NASA, which is Transport Secretary Sean Duffy, met with his Russian counterpart. There will be a Russian astronaut aboard this Crew 11 mission. But if SpaceX wasn't there, then the only other option for the United States would be Russia, which in this climate, yeah.
They've been told to go for launch, Ed, and this is symbolic from a geopolitical perspective on who is on board.
Yeah, we'll get to the crew, but, you know, I think this might be a first for Bloomberg Tech. Have we ever carried a launch live? I don't know. But with 10 seconds on the clock, let's listen in.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engine's full power and liftoff. Go Falcon, go NASA, go Crew 11.
Together we rise as NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 heads up to the International Space Station.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
1.7 million pounds of
Stage 1
thrust.
propulsion is nominal.
Propelling Falcon 9 as the vehicle pitching downrange and making its way up the East Coast, and will soon join Expedition 73 aboard the orbiting laboratory. So far, getting good callouts on that first stage performance.
We are now T plus 35 seconds into the Crew 11 mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 engines
Stage 1 throttle down.
Are throttling down to help
Power and telemetry are nominal.
To help pass through the period of max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle during ascent.
Max Q.
We just had max Q right there.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
1 minute, 9 seconds into what is a little bit more, less than a 9-minute flight uphill as Dragon continuing.
Stage 1, Bravo.
So currently traveling 1,500 kilometers an hour is the SpaceX Falcon 9 with Dragon on top, goes through Earth's atmosphere. It will get up to around like 5,500, 5,600 miles per hour. When it gets to that orbital height, you're talking like 17,500 miles per hour. They called the moment of max Q, Caro, which is the moment where the rocket's under most stress. You know, from a G-force perspective, passing through Earth's atmosphere, that rough air that it passes through. But the next key moment is about, I don't know, let's say 30 seconds away. And that's where that first stage, the main booster, you have main engine cutoff, or MECO. And it's kind of an important moment because from there, you'll get the two stages separating. And then it's like literally fully automated. It's, I was going to say clockwork, but it's rocket science. And it's pretty flawless most of the time.
And who's it? Mike Finke, who's the pilot from NASA, veteran on these 3 previous missions, we understand, managing to ensure that we get safely these people on board, these 4 crew members, up to ISS. So pretty integral moment, and we wonder just how their bodies are feeling on board right now. Can you just give us a sense of what it's like to experience this sort of force?
I don't know, because I've never been on a rocket. But no, it's immense stress on the body. We just saw that perfect shot of first and second stage separations. What you're looking at is the single engine attached to the second stage at the base of Dragon capsule. You raise a really good point, which is on the crew, and you asked me earlier, but we got interrupted by the flawless launch, frankly. But one of the interesting things about this is that the commander of this mission, Zena Cardman, she had been due to fly on Crew 9. She's now leading Crew 11, but this is her first ever space flight.
Wow.
And that's notable because the shuffle was caused, if you remember, by the Starliner program and all the different tests that kind of went wrong and the timeline slipped. But that's a really interesting and notable moment. We're about 3 minutes and 30 seconds into this sequence. The booster, as it falls down to Earth, we're not seeing it in shot right now, will sort of do its burns and flips pretty soon before it comes into shot. But again, as it stands, this is all nominal, Caro, as they say, which means everything's going fine. Going fine for Crew 11 to then dock to relieve Crew 10 astronauts who've been on ISS for how long? Many months, I think, since the spring. The idea is that that there's a handover period, right, which is really quite normal, and they, you know, in order to get there, have to dock, and then there will be plans in place by NASA and SpaceX to bring the existing crew back down there online. And you know, like one of the good questions that you raised earlier and that people always ask in our coverage is like, what are they going for? And part of it is like, I'm repeating myself a little, but ISS gets decommissioned in about 6 years' time. You know, it's the end of the agreement. It's served its life. But in the interim, it needs maintenance. And so as part of the cargo or payload that's going up with Crew 11, there'll be materials to service the humans on board, but also like the scientific apparatus and equipment that's up there. And let's just dwell a little bit more. You mentioned Zena Cardman, commander and one of
the few active female commanders in recent years. We've got Mike the pilot. You've also got Japan involved, Russia involved. This is geopolitics at work here.
Yep, so JAXA, which is the Japanese space agency, has sent Kimiya Yui. This is his second space flight. He actually went up into space 2015. And then this is the bit, right? There's the reporting that we had today that the interim NASA chief, which is Transport Secretary Sean Duffy, had met with his Russian counterpart. Because the context is, were SpaceX not around to do this, then America, because of what's happened with Boeing and Starliner, would probably rely on Roscosmos, the Russian agency, to take American astronauts to the International Space Station. Now, in this case, there is a Russian astronaut aboard the capsule. His name is Oleg Platonov. It's his first trip to space as well. And away from whatever is happening in geopolitics and in markets, remember that the agreement between America and Russia, Caro, is long-standing. The agreement literally to cooperate on not just ISS, but move astronauts from Earth into outer orbit in ISS.
Ed, what's so interesting is the dominance of Elon Musk's SpaceX here. Yeah. We also think about Japan being in the mix and indeed Russia, as you say, alongside the United States. It was but this week earlier, so much has happened this week, but that Australia didn't manage to get its rocket off the ground. Just where do we stand in this so-called space race? So
SpaceX, as a private company, but an American company, dominates the vast majority of payload to orbit, around 85 to 90%, including human and non-human payload. China is increasingly doing more. You will also remember that, like, there are other nations around the world. Some of the Gulf states, like UAE, have space ambitions. But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right, which is the economics of launch, as we see the booster on the left-hand side of the screen re-entering Earth's atmosphere, falling down using aerodynamics, but also the paddles at the base to orient itself and slow itself down. On the clock, by the way, I'm jumping around a bit, but we're 7 minutes in, and the kind of key moment is about 40 seconds away, where we should see that booster land back to the landing zone. But to answer your question, yes, SpaceX dominates, but there is pressure coming from both government sector-backed and private sector-backed rivals around the world.
And we're just losing some connection. There we have it. Will they make a landing? It's like art, Ed. There we have it.
Well, it's rocket science.
Art and rocket science at work. But just remind us, because we've just been so in awe of not only these landings and the reusable rockets, but the catch that we've seen in the next iteration of spacecraft coming from Elon Musk.
Yeah, so Falcon 9 is SpaceX's high-volume vehicle launch system. That's what we're looking at here with Dragon capsule on top. But they also have Falcon Heavy, which is used for basically higher density satellite payload. It hasn't taken humans. And then Starship's the next phase. Starship, the biggest rocket that humankind's ever built. And I think Elon Musk has said on X that the next full test of Starship is going to be in the next month or so. The mechanism for the Starship booster in that system is, as you say, not to land it on a landing pad as we just demonstrated with Falcon 9, but to catch it. And you know, we can't do this right now because we're carrying the launch live, but go on the internet and look at how that works. That bit they've kind of done. They've done it successfully. It's the ongoing spacecraft part of Starship that they're still working out.
Let's talk a little bit about economics here of NASA as well, because we just see the energy behind wanting to put money to work behind Elon Musk's SpaceX, and the rounds get larger and the valuation just soars. Yeah. But NASA itself is trying to do more with less.
I mean, and SpaceX has been at the core of that story, and it's something that started in the Obama administration. You know, again, the economics of space have changed. SpaceX has never disclosed the per-seat cost, but you can do the math based on the disclosures that we do have. And it's several $1 million per person. Compare and contrast with what else has been out there from United Launch Alliance and... let me just catch this key moment here. Look at that.
As we see Dragon coast into its orbit.
And a wonderful view there is Dragon Endeavour with Crew 11 on board. Safe.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And safe and...
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to ground. Zena, Mike, Kimya, Oleg, welcome to orbit. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon today and wish you a great mission. Dragon will take you from here. Over to Launch Director for a few words. On behalf of
So, Caro, what that was Dragon, the capsule, on the left-hand side of the screen. You see the crew inside there separating from the second stage. And now they're in orbit, right? And I'm just going to give you a quick statistic, which is very interesting. We were scrubbed on Thursday. 23 hours later, we did launch on Friday. But because of where ISS was lined up with planet Earth, for a layman's explanation, actually what's going to happen is that, all being well and equal, Crew 11 and Dragon will arrive at the ISS at exactly the same time on Saturday morning, about 3 a.m. Eastern time, as they would have done if they had launched yesterday. And that kind of speaks to speaks to rocket science, doesn't it?
This view of space and analysis of curvature of Earth and speed at which we rotate in orbit, it sometimes works beautifully. It aligns, Ed, as this entire viewership has been seeing throughout the show, of what's happening currently live with Falcon 9 and how we start to see the astronauts now relieved. Now, just go back to the economics a little bit, because what we're expecting now is they are going to reach ISS. They're going to be relieving Crew 10. But in the future, will we see fewer astronauts on board?
Maybe. I mean, again, the movement here is for the private sector to build space stations. And so, the cadence of that happening, who knows? This crew will be there for 6 months. NASA's thinking about maybe 8 months. Relieve Crew 10. They were there since March. They need to come home. But this mission's a success. So far.
We continue to see how the astronauts celebrate on board. As you mentioned, Japan, the US, and Russia represented. That does it for this very global and very intergalactic edition of Bloomberg Tech.
Out of this world. Check out the podcast. You know where to find it. We publish it everywhere. Lots of you listen to it. It's been a great week. This is Bloomberg Tech.